everyone, it's Danny. Alrighty, today we will discuss about how to water Dendrobium Nobile orchids. I've made so many videos on Dendrobium nobiles because I do love them and they seem to do very well for me. But I mainly focused on the winter rest and when to provide winter rest and so on, that I really didn't discuss how to water these orchids, especially in the summertime when it is their growing season. And this is a very important time, so I think this will be useful for you guys who are thinking of buying a Dendrobium nobile or already have one, but you don't know how to water it. So today we'll discuss about proper watering of this orchid in the summertime when the orchid is growing. Alrighty, so if you are not acquainted with Dendrobium nobiles, I will add in the description below. You will find a video in the description explaining the growth pattern of a Dendrobium nobile, its life cycle, how it blooms, and so on. So do check that one first so you get acquainted with this orchid. Also, I will add a link towards the video with winter rest because this orchid takes a winter rest. So if you're not familiar with this orchid, check those links as well. But let's focus on caring for this Dendrobium in the summertime. So usually after the blooms fade, this is an awkward blooming, this is an off-season blooming, but usually when all the blooms fade, the orchid will start to produce new growth, new pseudobulbs that appear at the base of the orchid and sometimes on the top of the orchid, but usually at the base of the orchid. Now it is the time to fully water this orchid. They absolutely love abundant water, and for this Dendrobium to look good and to be powerful, you need to provide tremendous, copious amounts of water during summertime or their growth season. Now the paradox is that this Dendrobium doesn't really do well with very water retentive media, although it likes water. So media like sphagnum moss really doesn't do so well with Dendrobium nobiles, for me as well as for others. So for this reason, I actually pot my Dendrobium nobiles in a coarse media, kind of like Cattleya media if you're acquainted with Cattleyas. Very ventilated, well draining. Bark chips is the way to go with Dendrobium nobiles because it's just so easy to maintain and it will not give you headaches. Now the drawback of bark chips is that it dries pretty fast. It is airy and nice, but it dries pretty fast, so you need to be careful because this orchid needs to be watered when it approaches dryness. If your bark is completely dry, it's a sign you should water ASAP, but if it's still slightly moist, hopefully you can see here, it's not soggy in any way, but it is a little bit moist. It's a good time to water this orchid. So how I like to water this orchid is actually soak it. Bark media does very well in the summertime if you soak it, and also this orchid likes to sit and absorb water, so my preferred method is to actually soak the orchid. So I get some water in a watering can and simply fill the decorative pot or whatever bowl without drainage you can find in the house. So fill it up to the brim of the plastic pot in which the orchid is actually potted in, and just leave it there for at least 15 minutes. Sometimes I forget about it and I can go 1 hour with this orchid in water, but it's okay, it absolutely loves it. So you can keep it soaking like this for at least 15 minutes to 30 minutes, however you have time, and it should be good. Okay, so after 15 minutes I will come back. Okay, while the other Dendrobium is soaking, I would just like to show you some signs of dehydration. Now I think this orchid is overdue for some watering. Yeah, for a couple of days now, and look what happens. Look at these pseudobulbs. They can get so shriveled so fast. It can happen overnight if it's not properly hydrated. If your orchid starts to look like this and it has healthy roots, it's a sign that you need to water ASAP. If you don't water in time, you can get some crinkly leaves, believe it or not, just like an oncidium, and I have an example from last year right here, but they can get very crooked, very accordion shaped and so on. So if I leave this orchid another day, these leaves, these new leaves, will start to get to grow rather very accordion shaped like, and it's not a pleasant sight. So if you want to keep your Dendrobium nobile straight with beautiful straight leaves, you need to water in time. If you skip 2 days, you're already in trouble. So I will water this orchid as well. Okay, so my Dendrobium has been sitting in water for 10 or 15 minutes. It is now time to remove the water. So simply pick up the orchid, let it drain as best as you can. What I like to do is actually place it on a separate tray or a separate dish, let it drain very well, and dispose of this water. After a few minutes, my orchid is completely drained. As you can see, there is no excess water. I can now place it back in its decorative pot. If this is the way you grow it, you can place it back and put it back in its place and water it again when the media approaches dryness once again. Because each environment is different and each potting media might be different, I cannot tell you how often you should water this orchid. It might be every 3 days, it might be every 5 or every 10. You need to observe your orchid and figure out when it's time to water it. The best way to tell is to look at the media. If you don't have a clear pot like I have and you don't really see the media, you can insert a finger in the media a few centimeters deep. When you pull it off, if it's barely moist, it is time to water. If it's wet, properly wet, don't water. And if it's bone dry, water it as soon as possible. Now, all summer long, I do this while these canes are growing. At some point, the canes will stop growing, and you will be able to see this. They will not produce any more leaves from the top. Now, this is a sign that you kind of need to reduce watering. You don't have to water so often because the orchid will not consume that much energy anymore. At this point, just make sure you water when the canes will start to shrivel up. At this point, you don't necessarily need to soak the orchid anymore. You can just run water through the pot, again, because the orchid is not consuming so much energy. Now, in the autumn, the rest period should start. So as I said, when the orchid is not growing anymore, you should reduce watering. And as the temperatures go lower and lower, let's say in November, you should completely stop watering it. My ritual in my environment is that in November, I do not water almost at all this orchid. Maybe once every 3 weeks, I give it a light watering through the pot if the canes go really shrivel. But other than that, if the canes look good, I do not water this orchid and actually leave it on my other balcony where it gets very low temperatures, let's say 5-10 degrees Celsius, and I leave it like that until the new buds start to appear. This is what we call the winter rest for this orchid. Now, when the buds start to appear from each side of the cane, it is a sign that you should start to water again, but don't soak the orchid. What I do is run a little bit of water through the pot. At this point, you will see the canes will start to shrivel up faster again because the orchid is putting its energy into producing the flower buds. So you do need to water this orchid. While the orchid is in bloom, you will need to start watering more and more, but again, the orchid will tell you, just look at the pseudobulbs, and when the new growth starts to actively grow fast, you can resume the normal watering schedule just like I showed you. Another important thing, you can fertilize all summer long, but when the rest period starts, you should stop fertilizing altogether. Resume fertilizing your orchids when the flowers fade and the new growth starts. And this is the proper way of watering a Dendrobium Nobile orchid. As I told you, it is that type of orchid which absolutely loves water, but absolutely loves free draining media, very aerated media. As you could see, I keep it in plain bark, and they're doing just fine. I'll also add an annotation with my Dendrobium nobiles in full bloom. It is a spectacle. This is how I care for them, and it seems to do just fine. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you have a Dendrobium nobile, I hope you water it abundantly right now, because here in the northern hemisphere we are almost in summer, so this orchid is in full growth mode and it has a very rapid growth rhythm. It really needs water. So if you'd like to see more videos like this, just subscribe to my channel. You can leave me questions and suggestions in the comment section below and I'll get back to you. And also you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram if you just want to stay in touch. You have all the links below. I'll see you next time. Thank you for joining. Bye!